Whoop, eh? Everybody's heard of Whoop Whoop, right? And everybody's been to Whoop Whoop, I suppose. There's a lot of people in the Bible that I can think of that's been to Whoop Whoop, or the back of Whoop Whoop. Because I think of Moses, firstly. You know, he trekked through the desert for 40 years or more, with about 2 million Israelites moaning and groaning. I think he warrants a chapter in the book of Whoop Whoop. There's another guy, I think of old Paul. I mean, if you look at his life and the trials and tribulations he went through, he probably should be the author of the book. But there's one true one, which we all know who that is, Jesus Christ, who came from heaven to earth, backwards journey, to journey with us. About David's journey. So David is the pastor at Reedy Creek Baptist. No, not that David, the other one. So David knows pretty well about the back of Whoop Whoop because I'm going to read you, if you got your Bibles with you, if you can look up 1 Samuel 16, 1 to 13, we're going to read quickly. And I think this is probably where David's journey started off in his life. So let's read together. The Lord said to Samuel, "How long will you mourn for Saul, since I have rejected him as king over Israel? Fill your horn with oil and be on your way. I'm sending you to Jesse of Bethlehem. I have chosen one of his sons to be king." But Samuel said, "How can I go? If Saul hears about it, he will kill me." The Lord said, "Take a heifer with you and say, 'I have come to sacrifice to the Lord.' Invite Jesse to the sacrifice, and I will show you what to do. You are to anoint for me the one I indicate." Samuel did what the Lord said. When he arrived at Bethlehem, the elders of the town trembled when they met him. They asked, "Do you come in peace?" Samuel replied, "Yes, in peace. I've come to sacrifice to the Lord. Consecrate yourselves and come to the sacrifice with me." Then he consecrated Jesse and his sons and invited them to the sacrifice. When they arrived, Samuel saw Eliab and thought, "Surely the Lord's anointed stands here before the Lord." But the Lord said to Samuel, "Do not consider his appearance or his height, for I have rejected him. The Lord does not look at the things people look at. People look at the outward appearance, but the Lord looks at the heart." Then Jesse called Abinadab and had him pass in front of Samuel. But Samuel said, "The Lord has not chosen this one either." Jesse then had Shammah pass by, but Samuel said, "Nor has the Lord chosen this one." Jesse had 7 of his sons pass before Samuel, but Samuel said to him, "The Lord has not chosen these." So he asked Jesse, "Are these all the sons you have?" "There's still the youngest," Jesse answered. "He's tending sheep." Samuel said, "Send for him. We will not sit down until he arrives." So he sent for him and had him brought in. He was glowing with health, had a fine appearance and handsome features. Then the Lord said, "Rise and anoint him. This is the one." So Samuel took the horn and oil and anointed him in the presence of his brothers. And from that day on, the Spirit of the Lord came powerfully upon David. And Samuel went to Ramah. So, a very interesting story, and probably all of us know it already. But if you think about how it was set up by Jesus talking to Samuel, and said, "Go to Jesse," and went to Jesse, and he said, "Look, mate, I'm here to, bring an offering to Jesus. Would you want to come with me? Do it with me. Bring your sons along." And, so he did that, exactly what the Lord said. And he brings the first one, no. Second one, no. Third one, no. Through 7. He says, "Jesse, are you serious, mate? Is this all your sons?" "Oh, sorry, I forgot about one." "Where is he?" "He's in the back of Whoop Whoop looking after sheep." This is set up by Jesus. This is set up by God. No surprises to God that David wasn't there. He knew all about it. Anyway, David comes, as we know, he gets anointed by as the next king of Israel. So at this stage, David is probably 15 years old. So he gets anointed as king of Israel. He gets a crown, gets a robe, gets a staff, limousine, abracadabra, he's a king. No, that's not what happened. He's anointed as king by God. He's sent back to Whoop Whoop. He's back into the bush. Let me remind you what the bush of Israel looked like. And if you think Gold Coast bush, you're way off. No lush trees, no creeks, gravel as far as you can see. Sun, hot, lions, bears. 15-year-old, after being anointed as king of Israel in the back of Whoop Whoop. I said, and then if you think about what herdsmen did while they were herding their sheep. I mean, they sat there looking at their sheep all day long, right? No. The herdsman was probably the loneliest guy on the planet because he had sheep. That's all he had. He had sandals without socks, like Brad. He constantly thirsty because they're in the sun, constantly hungry, I reckon, because they can't carry much food with them. Sleep deprived because at daytime they check with their sheep as they graze, and at nighttime when the sheep go to bed, the shepherd's got to look after the sheep and kill lions and bears while he's doing it. So, as you can imagine, the life of a shepherd probably wasn't the easiest life in the world. Anyway, so I'm thinking, me in the desert after being anointed as a king, I would say, God, I think you made a mistake. I think I should be somewhere where I can influence people. I'm sitting in the bush. There's nobody around me. What am I king of? Am I king of the sheep? No. You're anointed by God. Stand your ground. So my question to you tonight is, my first question would be, what is your Whoop Whoop? Where do you go to where you find yourself frustrated like anything? And you feel like you're alone, and you're empty, and you're hungry. You know, what is that? And that would come into your mind right now. I don't think you'll doubt that. And it's hard for me to say what you should do in that situation, but I know what David did, because we read in the Bible. He said, he wrote poems, the most beautiful poems that you can find in Psalms. And he probably didn't write all of them there, but he must have written a few of them there. And so, what am I saying? I'm thinking that, you know, you're not a poet, I might not be a poet, but in that time he connected with God. Because it's easy to see what he had written in Psalms, to know that he was in connection with God. There's no doubt in my mind. So I think what we should do is we should stay connected to God in that moment. Don't get angry like I sometimes do. Don't get frustrated like I sometimes do. Just stick close to God. Push into Him. The other thing is, sorry, I'm just finding my place. He played the harp, the lyre, it's called, or the lyre, small harp. So he kept on doing what he knew he could do. He kept on doing what he was talented at. He didn't stop doing that while he was traveling in a place where he didn't want to be. He was continuing doing that. And while he was playing that thing, he was worshiping, obviously. Because he must have been singing while he was doing that. He was great singing, he was great harp. It's so many talents. Most diverse man I've ever seen. Killed lions, he wrote poems, he played the harp, he was a great king, he was a great soldier. You know, he was a very diverse man. But he knew what to do in the back of Whoop Whoop. The one thing I struggled to understand while he was in the bush is that at 15 years of age, he killed lions and bears. Now, if that doesn't impress you, nothing much will. Because here's a boy of 15 years old. He's in the bush every night. He doesn't have a gun with him. He's got a slingshot, and he kills bears and lions. It's ridiculous. But what I read in that is that the Lord had to toughen David up in some sort of a way, because that was his journey. And all of our journeys are different. Our back of Whoop Whoop is different for all of us. But it's no surprise for the Lord, because He knows each of us. He knows our future. He knows our destiny. So when He puts us in Whoop Whoop, He knows about it. He does not send you to Whoop Whoop and say, See ya. I'll check you on the other side. Doesn't say that. He says, I'll walk in, you walk behind me, and when I walk you in, I'll walk you out. It's a promise. So that's what David did in his first stage of his life. The second stage of his life, so that was pretty tough. The second stage of his life was, I'm just going to quickly read it to you. If you want to follow, it's 1 Samuel 16:15 to 22. The second stage is Saul attended and said to him. Saul was obviously an angry man. And the Spirit of God has left him. So he was pretty not happy about life. See, an evil spirit from God is tormenting you. Let our Lord command his servants here to search for someone who can play the lyre. He will play when the evil spirit from God comes on you, and you will feel better. So Saul said to his attendants, find someone who plays well and bring him to me. One of the servants said, I have seen a son of Jesse of Bethlehem, who knows how to play the lyre. He is a brave man and a warrior. He speaks well, and he is a fine-looking man. And the Lord is with him. Then Saul sent messengers to Jesse and said, send me your son, who is with the sheep. So Jesse took a donkey, loaded it with bread and a skin of wine and a young goat, and sent with him his son David to Saul. David came to Saul and entered his service. Saul liked him very much, and David became one of his armored bearers. Then Saul sent from word to Jesse, saying, allow David to remain in my service, for I am pleased with him. So David is sitting in the back of Whoop Whoop, minding his own business. Playing the harp, killing lions, killing bears, doing what he's doing. Not complaining, not moaning where he is at that moment. He's just there doing what he's doing. Highest authority in Israel sends for David. David doesn't go to the palace and knocks on Saul's door and say, hey mate, I'm the next king. Can I come and live in your, one of your rooms? No. He's sitting in the back of Whoop Whoop. He's waiting on God to move. What does God do? God sends the highest authority to grab him out of Whoop Whoop. Like that. From rags to riches in a second. So he's going from the bush to the palace, right? And I'm thinking, where's your palace? Because all of us have stages in our lives where we're tracking really well. Everything is going well. We don't have to push ourselves. We don't have to step out of our comfort zones. We just, financially it's going well. It's all good. How do you react in that moment? Because that's part of life. I can tell you what David did. When the messengers came to David didn't say, oh, I don't think it's me. Maybe you've got the wrong guy. He packed his donkey and he left because he was called by God. The second thing he did in the palace is he was living it up. He was enjoying the moment. He wasn't hard laboring in the palace because he was just playing the harp. And he was one of Saul's arm bearers. So he just did his job. Another thing that he was really impressed by was the humility he did it with. Because as a future king of Israel, anointed already, he knows that the Spirit of God has left Saul because him and Samuel are friends. So he says, he could have said there, look, I'm a little bit more important than this job. I can do better than this because I'm actually the king. And now I've got to play the harp. Why? Didn't do that. He stayed humble. He stuck to the journey. Another thing that and that is for us a good example, because when we're tracking well, we've got to stay humble. We can't get all arrogant about where we are. And then the fourth thing he did is he learned the practicalities of life in the palace. So he obviously he knew Saul. He knew what a good soldier man Saul was. So he learned all of that from Saul. He learned from all his peers. And in that time, guess what? He became best friends with Jonathan, which was like a brother to him. So what did he do? He built relationships in that good times when he felt that there was no pressure on him. And that's so critical in our lives too, because when we're tracking well, we sort of, my history shows that I can become more, I think, I'm going well, mate. Don't ask me, I'm good. But that's not what it's about. When you're tracking good, you should, invite people, surround yourself with people, because we never know what happens the next day, as we see what happened with David. So the next stage of David's journey is obviously the one we all know about. That's in 1 Samuel 17:34 to 37. It's a short piece. I'm just going to read quickly to you. But David said to Saul, "Your servant has been keeping his father's sheep. When a lion or a bear came and carried off a sheep from the flock, I went after it, struck it, and rescued the sheep from its mouth. When it turned on me, I seized it by its hair, struck it, and killed it. Your servant has killed both the lion and the bear. This uncircumcised Philistine will be like one of them, because he has defied the armies of the living God. The Lord who rescued me from the paw of the lion and the paw of the bear will rescue me from the hand of the Philistine." Saul said to David, "Go, and the Lord be with you." We know the rest of the story. What we see here is that the preparation in Whoop Whoop paid off big time. Because without the preparation in Whoop Whoop, David wasn't ready to kill Goliath. Because nobody else was ready. Not even an army was ready to kill Goliath. And we have Goliath in our, what's the plural of Goliath? Goliaths, not sure. But we have those in our lives. And we have to face them. We can't run away from them. So, as I say, that was your Goliath. In David's instance, how did he handle his Goliath? It's very interesting because, firstly, he identified that he had gone through a deepening period with God. So he identified that he was ready for this. So, in that moment in Whoop Whoop, there was no growth spiritually as what you could see with your eyes. So he was like a tree in wintertime. There was no leaves, nothing, no visible growth, but his root went down. And so he knew that God had done something in him, inexplicable. But he felt it in him. That's why he had the courage to go up to Saul. He acted in confidence because he knew it was God's will. He didn't doubt that. He knew that. He also knew that the voice he heard in his head was God's voice. How did he know that? He was in Whoop Whoop. When it was quiet, when there was nobody around, when it was lonely, he identified God's voice, and he could now recall God's voice in a moment when he really needed it. He also ignored the naysayers. There will always be people in your life that say to you, "You can't do it. You're not strong enough. You're not good enough. It's not for you." David walked into the camp where the war was going on, where Goliath was taunting everybody. And as he walked in, his brother said to him, "Mate, what are you doing here? You're not supposed to be here. You just come here because you're bloodthirsty. You like watching war. You're 15. Go home. Look after the sheep." So the people who were supposed to love David the most told him off. Said to him, "Mate, what are you doing here?" Isn't that the same in our lives sometimes? The people close to us tell us that we're not good enough. The other thing is, but David went on. He did. Another naysayer was Saul. Saul sort of doubted him too. He said, "Look, mate, that armor is too heavy for you. What are you doing?" And David said to him, "Mate, I'm 15, but I've killed lions and bears. I can do this because God's walking with me." So he powered through. We all know he killed Goliath. What did he do at the end? Chopped off his head. Took Goliath's sword, chopped off his head, brought the head back to Saul. Very gruesome. But there was a moral of the story. Why did they do that in those days? Because it was a victory. It was a celebration of victory. And we should do that. So when we conquer our Goliath, when we walk through a journey that our Goliath, and a Goliath can be a person, Goliath can be a situation in your life, Goliath can be anything that deters you from your destiny. And so when he chopped that head off Goliath off, he took that head to Saul, the celebration was, the victory. He celebrated the victory. Like when they went to the promised land, they built that stones of remembrance. And so it's a godly thing. When God says, He says to us, do that. Because when you look back in your tough situations, you can look where you build all the stones. And you can say, look how many times God carried me through. How will He drop me now? Impossible. He won't, because we see the victories in our lives. So I beg of you tonight is that one thing important is that identify the Goliath and slay it. It's for your benefit and it's the benefit of the kingdom. Because those things hold us back and we can't do what we're supposed to be doing for God. The next stage of David's life, I'm not going to read that because that's a really long part, but you can read that by yourself. Really important, very, if you think he was in the back of whoop whoop in the first phase of his life, that looks like a walk in the park to compare to where he was now. Because God, after that victory of David killing Goliath, Saul got really cranky. And he said, look, mate, I don't like this guy. I want to kill him. I don't want him alive. And so he pursued. I think it's about 8 years. I'm not sure. But it was a long time. It was not short. That David ran. Stayed in grottos, stayed in caves. People surrounded with him. And he ran from place to place. How did David deal in this phase of his life? How did he track in the second whoop whoop, which was worse than the first whoop whoop? And as I mentioned before, how can you mention David without Jonathan? Because they were like this. So David, in that time in the palace, surrounded himself with somebody who would have his back, who he knew that he could trust. And in this state, this is exactly what Jonathan did when Saul wanted to kill David. He always warned David and said, watch out, mate, my dad's not happy. Go do this, do that. So he always had people surrounding him that loved him, that looked out for him. The second one was Michal, who was his wife. She helped him one night get away because she heard that Saul was going to kill him. So she let him get away. So what am I saying? I'm saying that in these times, friends and family is probably the best bet for you. When you are tracking in whoop whoop where it's very tough. And we all of us know that really. That's not a surprise. The second thing David did was he sought counsel from Samuel. So he often went to Samuel and said, hey Samuel, what's up, mate? What should I do? How should I do with this? And the priests of Nob, all of that. He always went to counsel with people. And often when we do this, because we've got pride in us, like I do, people ask you, how are you going? I said, no, I'm good, mate. Don't worry, I'm good. Help somebody else. Because we are scared to ask for help. What did David do? He's a king of Israel, a future king of Israel. He was not shy to go to Samuel and say, help me, mate. You've got the wisdom. We are surrounded by so many wise people, yet we still hold on to what we believe, and we're so shy and timid to go to somebody and say, mate, help me. I don't know. There's no harm in doing that. You're not a lesser man or woman to go ask for help. Actually, you're a wise man or woman. He prayed often. And we all do that when we're traveling tough. We pray a lot. But David prayed like it was a life and death situation. So that's way different. When you pray from that perspective, you can't wait to hear from God. Because if you don't hear from God, you might make the wrong choice and you'll fall off the wagon or get killed. So he lived by God's voice every day of his life. And probably the most impressive thing that David did in this whole thing of running from Saul was the fact that, I don't know if you remember, but at one point Saul went into a grotto to relieve himself, and David and his men was in the back of the cave, and he crawled closer and he cut a piece of David's robe, and Saul's robe, and as soon as Saul left, he waved it in the air and said, hey Saul, look at this, mate. I had you. I could have killed you. And Saul was very thankful. And David said, I could have, but I can't. Because how can I kill somebody who has been anointed by Jesus, by God himself? So what did he do? He showed grace. How many times when we are under pressure and under the pump, we want to throw somebody else under the bus? Because I'm under the pump already, mate. I'm not tracking well. I'm not doing well. It's your turn. Have a go. It's like that. It's like that in our lives. When we're going well, it's easy to show grace. But when we're traveling hard, we just want somebody to just hold you because you need a shoulder to cry on. That's not what David did. He showed grace. He had the chance to kill Saul and say, I'm ending all of this. I had enough of this. I'm stronger than him. I am the anointed next king. Done. He didn't. So that's very impressive. And then the last phase of David's life was when he was back in the palace, full circle. Eventually, he got to the palace. You know, he had such a hard time after being anointed as king of Israel to get where he was supposed to be. But the Lord knew that. And the Lord had to prepare him all the way. And he did. But there was that last thing in the tail. The dreaded Bathsheba incident. That would have made a great movie, modern movie, because there was a beautiful lady, there was a king, and there was a soldier. Love triangle of note. But the story goes, she was bathing on the roof, and David saw her, and he lusted after her. He got her to his palace. He made her pregnant. He felt bad. He thought, I've got a plan. I'm smart. I'll get Uriah, who was Bathsheba's husband, fighting a war. He's in the palace. He's the king. He's not even at war. He's sending his soldiers, and while they're there, he's doing this. So he gets Uriah back. He says, Uriah, come back, have a rest, hoping that he would go home and sleep with his wife, and nobody would know that it's David's kid. What does Uriah do? He sleeps on the palace's steps. David says to him, what are you doing, mate? Why are you sleeping here? Go home. He says, I'm a soldier. How can I sleep in my bed when my men are sleeping in the bush? What a man. What a great man. I would have gone, whoop, straight home. TV. Nice dinner. You know, that's what we would do. But that guy was such an outstanding man. What does David do? David runs out of plans. Him thinking, I'm in trouble here. So he puts Uriah in the front line. Uriah gets killed. So David becomes a murderer. He's accomplice in murdering Uriah, which had done nothing wrong. In actual fact, he was a great man, according to what we read. Because if you think how sinful that was, yet God said, he's a man after my heart. You know, and that sort of struck me because I'm thinking, God says that. I mean, if God says that, I've got a chance. I've got a chance to be loved by Jesus. And I am. And obviously we are. You might be thinking, I've been babbling on about David and his life. And how does that, pertain to us today? That was 2,000 more years ago. It's Old Testament. But it's obvious. It's obvious that David, who was an anointed man of God, had the ups and downs of life. He couldn't evade that, even though he was anointed. Same as Paul. Same as almost all of the guys that was really close to Jesus. The fact is, I Googled, because you can't work on a speech or talk if you don't Google stuff, right? So I Googled where Whoop Whoop is, because I'm not an Aussie, so I don't know if there is a place like Whoop Whoop. So I Googled Whoop Whoop. And guess what came up with? There's no place like Whoop Whoop. There's a Whoop Whoop Road. What does that mean? Is Whoop Whoop a state of mind in our lives? Is it what we think about Whoop Whoop? Or is Whoop Whoop a journey, a road? I think it's a little bit of both, if you ask me. I think when we track through life and we can't evade the bad and the good stuff, I think part of it is a mental attitude and part of it is coming close to God. Because doesn't God say, by the renewing of your mind? So we live in this world, but we're not of this world. So we can't think how people think who doesn't walk with Jesus. I guess what I'm trying to say is that it's normal, the ups and downs of life, and that if you're a Christian, your ride probably would be a little bit more bumpy, because there's a spiritual warfare going on, and Satan and his friends doesn't like us walking with Jesus, so he's going to throw everything at us. But there's hope in that. So I'm not telling you all these stories about David because I'm wanting to discourage you. Of course not. I'm telling you this because there's hope. There's hope that Jesus is there with you. And if you love Jesus and you talk to Jesus every day, you have to believe that when you're tracking in whoop whoop, that's where God wants you. Whether it's nice or not, that's a different story. But whether you should be there, that's undoubtedly true. We have to believe that if we believe in God and we really stick close to Him. Of course, sometimes we make mistakes and we end up in whoop whoop. That does not mean that God won't come and get you there. Right where you are. You call Him, and I get emotional. But He'll come and get you there. There's no doubt in my mind that He'll come and get you there. And I want to encourage you tonight that your journey, you might be traveling through whoop whoop at the moment. And maybe you're not. Maybe you're in the palace somewhere. And that's good too. Nothing wrong with that. But let's remind ourselves that if we are in the palace, there's people around us that's going through whoop whoop. Let's get together around those people, identify them, stand with them, and walk with them. That's all I wanted to say tonight. I want to just say that if you're feeling that life's really hard tonight, I'm going to be after, and I'd like to pray with you. If you want to come to me, I would love to pray for you. But let's pray now, just to finish it off. Lord God Almighty, we love you so much, Lord, and we know that you love us